Hello everyone, my name is Teila Rafaeli and I'm a faculty member in the Social Work Department of Ben-Gurion University, Israel. Today I will present the results of a longitudinal study that Professor Rami Ben-Benishti, Professor Anat Zira and I conducted on satisfaction with intimate relationships and parenthood of young people aging out of care, who from this point forward I will refer to as caregivers. We follow these young people from their last year in their residential care facilities to up to 10 years later. Studies consistently indicate that caregivers struggle in managing independent life tasks more than do their peers who are not in care. Caregivers experience a higher rate of housing instability and homelessness, unemployment, poverty, and economic distress, and higher rate of mental health problems, substance abuse, delinquency, and imprisonment. Many studies of caregivers focused on tangible outcomes, such as integration into higher education and job market. But relatively fewer studies have examined caregivers' intimate relationships and parenthood, although these milestones represent important transitions in anyone's adult life and can be a major challenge for caregivers. The limited literature that exists on this topic indicated that such relationships could serve as corrective experiences to their childhood adversities, namely the abuse and neglect they experienced. On the other hand, being in intimate relationships and becoming a parent may revive from adverse childhood experiences and therefore pose a significant challenge to changing intergenerational patterns. When we reviewed the literature on caregivers, we could not find studies exploring the satisfaction they derived from intimate relationships or from parenthood, but some studies have indeed explored various aspects of their intimate relationships and their parenthood. Accordingly, I will refer now to factors that might contribute to satisfaction in these areas of life. Generally speaking, less is known about the intimate relationships of caregivers than about their parenthood. The relatively greater knowledge about their parenthood might be attributed to the wide concern about caregivers' risk of abusing their own children, and efforts that have been put forward to prevent such abuse. The data on this topic is limited. However, studies indicate the possibility that previous traumatic life events and mental distress pose a risk to caregiver satisfaction with intimate relationships. Studies that have been conducted among other groups of young people support this notion. Studies have also indicated that low self-esteem, mental health problems, and depression were evident among young parents who were caregivers. In addition, for caregivers who are parents, substance abuse negatively impacted parenting experiences, but the data on this issue is also scant. One of the main characteristics of caregivers is the absence of family or other types of informal support. Such support can serve as a protective factor, and in fact, young people who had low level of support reported higher parental stress. Conversely, creating a network of support was meaningful to the positive parenting experience of caregivers. The support of the family of origin and intimate partners was extremely important in this context. However, there are high rates of single parenthood among caregivers, and the family of origin can be either a source of emotional, financial, and practical support or fail to provide the needed support. In this longitudinal study, we tested two models. One, predicting satisfaction with intimate relationships, and the second, predicting satisfaction with parenthood of Israeli caregivers a decade after they left care. The independent variables in the models were their background characteristics, including the traumatic history and the residential care characteristics, the personal characteristics, self-esteem, mental distress, and use of alcohol, and their informal support, which included their parental and peer support. This study was based on data from a 4-wave longitudinal study conducted in Israel. In 2009, young people in their last year in care were recruited from 26 residential care facilities. We then interviewed them 1 year, 4 years, and 10 years after they left care. You can see here how many of them we succeeded in finding at each step. The last time point was the most challenging. with higher rate of young people that we could not locate and refused to participate. And we reached only 55% of the participants at the first time point. This presentation will mainly focus on 113 participants who were in intimate relationships and 61 participants who were parents 10 years after leaving care. 40% of the 152 participants were both parents and in intimate relationships 10 years after leaving care. I won't go into details about the instruments, but I would like to show you which ones we used to examine the satisfaction with intimate relationships and satisfaction with parenthood, and the factors we used as possible predictors. After the preliminary analysis, and due to the small sample, here we mainly use data from the final time point. Exceptions are the demographic variables and the questions about the residential care, namely the placement variables. Before I move on to the main results, I would like to refer to the descriptive data of the participants' demographic characteristics by group and compare them to the caregivers who were not in intimate relationships and were not parents. Generally, a small number of differences were found between the four groups. Exceptions were that among those in intimate relationships, having a post-secondary education was more common than among the other group of those who were not in intimate relationships. In addition, among those in intimate relationships, there were higher rates of participants who were working and who had higher incomes compared to the other group. In addition, the mean age of the parents was a bit higher than those who were not parents. In terms of the variables relating to the residential placement experience, we found no difference between those who were in intimate relationships or were parents and the other participants. In accordance, our preliminary logistic regression analysis, based on the variables in the study, did not indicate significant models to predict the chances of being in the intimate relationships group compared to the group that is not currently in an intimate relationship. The same is true about being in the parent group compared to the group that does not have children. Since our time is limited, I'll only present the main results. Multivariate hierarchical regression analysis explored the combined contribution of the demographic, placement, personal, and support characteristics to the prediction of satisfaction with intimate relationships and with parenthood 10 years after leaving care. In each model, only the variables that were significantly correlated with the dependent variables in the bivariate analysis were entered. In the regression model for satisfaction with intimate relationship, in the first step, model 1 in the table, young people with higher income had a higher satisfaction with intimate relationships. Participant income accounted for 6% of the explained variance in the dependent variable. The second step, the second model in the table, indicated that higher traumatic life events, both before and after the age of 18, negatively associated with satisfaction with intimate relationships. Namely, the higher the number of traumatic life events the participant experienced, the lower the satisfaction from their intimate relationships. This step made a substantial and distinct contribution to the total explained variance of 16%. The third step indicated that higher self-esteem was associated with higher satisfaction with intimate relationships. This step made a distinct contribution of 7% to the total explained variance. The final model showed that caregivers' relationships with their fathers did not significantly contribute to satisfaction with intimate relationships when other factors had been included. The entire set of independent variables accounted for 31% of the variance in satisfaction with intimate relationships. In the regression model for satisfaction with parenthood, in the first step, model 1 in the table, higher traumatic life event, both before and after the age of 18, negatively associated with satisfaction with parenthood. Namely, the more traumatic life events the young people had, the less satisfied with their parenthood they were. This step made the highest contribution to the total explained variance of 32%. The second step, model 2 in the table, indicated that the higher the alcohol use and the higher the mental distress, the lower the satisfaction with parenthood. This step also made a high and distinct contribution of 19% to the total explained variance. The third and final model showed that satisfaction with intimate relationships was positively correlated with satisfaction with parenthood. Namely, having higher satisfaction with intimate relationships aspect was related to having higher satisfaction with parenthood. This step contributed 4.5% to the explained variance. The entire set of independent variables accounted for 55% of the variance in satisfaction with parenthood. Taking into consideration the short time we have today, I would like to offer only a few conclusions from our research. Our finding indicated that young people who reported having low incomes were at high risk of deriving low satisfaction from their intimate relationships, a finding that accorded with previous finding on the negative effect of economic stress. Although we had hoped that 10 years after leaving care, the caregiver would be more resilient in the aftermath of previous traumatic life events, our findings indicate that caregivers' backgrounds strongly and negatively related to the satisfaction they derived from their intimate relationships. The traumatic life event they experienced as adults also had a negative effect on the satisfaction they had in their intimate relationships. This finding indicates the need for ongoing and long-lasting emotional intervention for this vulnerable group. That said, we found self-esteem to be a resilience factor. It is important that we, researchers and professionals in the field, further explore other personal resources that can protect caregivers and contribute to the satisfaction they derived from intimate relationships. Turning to satisfaction from parenthood, here we also found the strong and negative effect of traumatic life events. Eastman and colleagues' literature review indicated the need to develop interventions for caregivers who become parents. However, in Israel, as in other countries, these services do not exist. Given that becoming a parent can revive memories of caregivers' own adverse childhood, there is a particular need for such interventions. Treatment of substance abuse and mental health issues is also necessary for this group. In light of our finding that only partner support contributed to parental satisfaction, whereas parental and peer support did not, and in the aftermath of previous studies indicating the low level of support available to caregivers in general, and specifically after they become parents, caregivers must be helped to widen their social networks and find alternative support systems that will replace the support they don't get from their family of origin. However, some of their needs for emotional support, practical advice, and guidance could be met via formal support systems, a notion that should be explored as a means to increase their satisfaction with parenthood. In this regard, I would like to highlight the fact that we are all interdependent and that we can no more expect caregivers to create and raise families alone, without end, without help, and independently, then we can expect that from anyone else. As Goodkind and his colleagues stated, we must challenge the societal equation of adulthood with independence, reflected in the use and services provided understandings of adulthood. There is a great deal of evidence that happy, healthy, successful adults are not independent, but instead have extensive social support. Thank you for your time. If you would like to read more about the previous time points from this study, here are some of the references to the papers we've published.